I'm Kate Lassiter. 23 years ago today, a group of terrorists made a series of attacks on America. Today is Patriots Day, a day to remember the victims of the attack, to remember the first responders who sacrificed to save lives. Please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance and pause for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now please pause for a moment of silence.
The images of 9/11 are a stark reminder of the horrors of that day, but also the strength and resiliency of the American people. Watch as we present a solemn presentation of pictures from September 11, 2001.
We have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
There's a huge pall of smoke coming from that direction.
The numbers of those attacks affected by 9/11 are staggering, just like the health problems the victims faced and first responders faced for weeks, months, and years afterwards. Our reporters sat down with healthcare teacher and physical trainer Derek Subject to find out what health problems the victims and first responders suffered as a result of the attacks.
3,000 people died and injured more than 6,000 others in the area. There were no survivors on the plane in which the event took place in. Since the attacks, airport security went up drastically, and they now question any suspicious characters.
A heartbreaking day in American history nearly 20 years ago, 4 terrorist attacks caused the collapse of the Twin Towers and damage to the Pentagon. While the impact has been felt all over the nation and the world, the immediate effects to the people around the wreckage have been devastating, so much so that they continue to affect Americans even to this day. Derek Subject, an athletic trainer and healthcare instructor at Alatoona High, reveals common diseases that plagued survivors of the attack.
The diseases that were going around at the time was more like upper respiratory infections, with all the dust and chemicals and pollutants and stuff in the air. People are having trouble breathing, getting asthma, so a lot of it was upper respiratory infections that were going on.
Research done the day of the attack showcases more specific information of the injuries suffered that day.
With a select group of people that showed that there's like 1,100 cuts, 200 burns, 80 fractures, dislocations, 69 concussions. But this was a small study of a group of a few thousand people that they surveyed that were there at 9/11. So that's some of the stuff they were experiencing on that day.
He informed us about the diseases they could contract and mentioned that many of them were long-term.
Going along with the research I was finding, right away people were experiencing psychological issues like PTSD. They were having traumatic issues such as breathing. There were some concussions going on, burns, fractures, dislocations. In the long term, it turned into more hearing problems, emphysema, high blood pressure, heart disease, PTSD, cancer, lung disease. In 2016, I found a study that said there were 5,400 cases of cancer that was linked to 9/11, and there's been a lot more since then.
9/11 was a tragic event that impacted millions of Americans. Must we never forget the people who helped save others and the victims on that horrible day in America. Reporting for The Anchor, I'm Jasmine Glenn.
While many felt the impact of the attacks in New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C., every American remembered where they were and what they were doing that day. Listen as Miss Andrea Stump recalls 9/11.
September 11th, I was working at Durham Middle School as a 7th grade language arts teacher. It was a Tuesday, I do recall, and I think I was in my classroom about 9:30 the first time that I heard what was going on, and we were told specifically, don't turn on your televisions, we'll tell you what's happening in a little bit. They didn't want to scare the kids. Actually, just down the hallway, Jody Bittler is a teacher over at Durham, still a teacher there. She went around and told everybody in our department this is what was happening, and the kids were going to be leaving very soon to go home with their parents. You know, one of the reasons why they didn't want us to tell the kids is because we had a lot of parents who worked for Delta, worked down at the airport. So initially the reactions from the students were of concern for their own families. And you know, people who work downtown. So from a student perspective, they were, you know, they're 12 years old and they were instantly concerned that it was going to affect their family. But then again, it was so far away that some of them couldn't relate at all. I had to fly out the next year, so it wasn't immediate for me, but family members who were coming down, because I was pregnant with my son at the time, they were going to be flying down to come see the new baby and all of that. So it was a little bit scary for them. They were concerned that they were going to be flying into, of all places, the largest airport in the world, and they weren't sure of the security measures that were going to be taken. And definitely, if you were an uncomfortable flyer in the first place, it didn't make anything any easier. I've talked about this a number of times. I feel if you're going to find a good that came out of September 11th, because there's not much that did, but people looked each other in the eye a whole lot more, and not because it wasn't of a trust factor, but I feel like people were making sure that they were aware of their surroundings. You know, look a person in the eye, say hello, say good morning, be aware of your surroundings, know what is out there, because we were not paying attention as a country to what was going on around us. And so there's this, if I go English teacher on you, there's this great documentary film where they have the image of two planes flying into the World Trade Center, and the music in the background is What a Wonderful World. And that's kind of what we were like at the time. We were in this crazy little juxtaposed world where it was, you know, amazing to be an American and everybody wants to be an American. And then planes flew into the World Trade Center and into the Pentagon and into a field in Pennsylvania, and we were oblivious to the fact that maybe we weren't looking around at other countries that didn't see us the way we thought we were.
The Thank you for joining us in remembering 9/11. Remember on this Patriots Day that as Americans, we stand strong as one.